So for the next 20 some minutes, we have a chunk of time here. I wanted to give a couple, talk about a couple of things we're looking at that are sort of future potential user agreement updates for the network, and a couple of other discussion topics. And in our first sort of in-person meeting, when Kim and I were getting really involved with the ACT network back in 2019, we had a lot of discussion and sort of made some decisions about moving forward in the room. We have we didn't want to exactly take that approach today, so this is intended as the start of a discussion on a couple of these things, and we'll be following up over email and could potentially schedule additional virtual meetings over the course of the summer or into the fall as needed to come together to an agreement and way to move forward on some of these different things as the network. So one of the things that I want to do is every now and then we've reviewed the user agreement to make sure that the language is up to date with sort of the way things currently are, and to see if there are things that we need to address to shift or to encompass sort of the change that's happened in the technology or the network or other things that might just be dated in the user agreement. And I did want to, so when we were opening the meeting today, I gave the definitions of the ACT network, the ACT network database, the Matos portal. It's very similar, but not exactly to what's in the last version of the user agreement. So that's one thing that we want to update so that it's consistent with the language that we're using now. And I wanted to just mention that, it is a user agreement. It started, I think, when, with OTN and in fact, were sort of the data policies that we used as the sort of templates for the ACT network user agreement. And the first one was like literally a copy of ACT that had ACT. So we dropped the F and kind of went from there. But so some of the early discussions with that first version included things like a really productive discussion with Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, among other funders, who said, wait a minute, we set the data policy. You don't set the data policy. And we're like, totally fair. So we changed it to user agreement from data policy. And so the sort of data use components of the agreement and the way the whole agreement are structured, just for those of you who haven't read it in a while or weren't aware of some of that history, we know we have a mix of projects, some that might be privately funded, that the data policy is with that data is sort of very open to the PI to decide what's going to happen with it. Some of us are at federal agencies or have federal grants where open data is a requirement of the work that we do. There's a whole mix of things in between, and so the structure of the user agreement is really intended to try to allow people to participate in this shared database and the matching across projects and networks that we do, while not prescribing the data policy. The data policy associated with the project follows those tags in the way it's currently formulated, wherever they go across FACT and ACT and OTM. Yeah, it's just a little extra background on that since it's come up in discussion a little bit, sort of data policies and user agreements. I just wanted to make the point that our user agreement is not a data policy. One of the things that's missing is, since we did the last version, we've had a huge influx of great projects and members and participants who are from Syracuse and are interfacing much more in that region. And so we need to add that and sort of better describe the current geography of the network. We've started doing allowing some additional things that sort of help data management and QA/QC that aren't really mentioned in here. So, one of the things that Kim's really been pushing to do, and OTN and others, is to make it possible for you to provide your tag and receiver spec sheets to go into your projects as well, which allows Kim to help you figure out issues in the database. If you entered the receiver serial number incorrectly into your data sheet, she can just go to your spec sheet and say, you wrote this, your spec sheet says this, can I make that change? And you don't have to do all that detective work and try to go back into your email to find where your supplier might have sent you that spec sheet or that kind of detailed information. So put in a note about that. A lot of the receivers and the acoustic release receivers and other infrastructure is providing things like temperature data. And we're ingesting a lot of that stuff. It's not going somewhere as much as it is in fact right now. And that's one of the things that we hope to work on. There's a lot of interest within Maracus, and I imagine Neracus as well, and how those temperature data, like the bottom temperature data, might be useful for model validation and a variety of other things. So that's figuring out what we want to do with those will be a really useful project for the future. But at this point, the user agreement doesn't say anything about it at all. So I'd like to add some language that describes what we're currently doing with that anyway. And then I want to update this statement, that what we can do to figure out what's going on with unmatched detections is very different now from what it used to be. Kim showed a nice slide that we worked with OTN, and they, in response to a question a year or so ago that I had for them, created this new data output that allows Kim for each data push to know what projects all of the unmatched detections are associated with. And it does some of these kinds of functions. This would be incredibly onerous with the scale of data that we have right now. I don't know if you still do this, Joy, for each individual unmatched. I'm sure you don't. So this was in the older FACT user agreement as well. So I want to update or maybe delete this, but something that describes the new things that we can do to help sort of address these unidentified tags. So those are kind of general updates. This isn't super specific. What my approach to these would be to sort of go through the document with the fine-tooth comb, create a track change version of what we want it to say, and share it around with people for feedback, and then ultimately ask the network to sort of vote thumbs up, thumbs down. Do we accept these changes? Okay, any questions about the general updates or other suggested ones that we might think about that you've run across that are in the user agreement? This can be sort of a point-by-point discussion. No. Okay. We just spent 45 minutes talking about this one, so I don't intend to talk about this in detail. Again, this is a project, well, a species that I work on in one of my projects with collaborators in the FACT network is shown here. I think it's so cool, so I showed this one when I'm to show like the kinds of things we can do with data in our projects. I think just to sort of reiterate some of the points, I want to get kind of a first sense in the room here of people's reaction now that they had the chance to grab some more coffee and maybe a cookie and think about it for 5 minutes. I think there are a couple of options for how the network could move forward with the DAVIT. We've had some initial conversations with Joy about this and with OTN and about what it would take to implement it. And the lift on the technical side is relatively small and relatively inexpensive, and I think is potentially a really cool opportunity for us. The decisions will be things like, do we do we want to participate at all? Yes or no? And if yes, there's probably sort of two major paths forward. One is an opt-in solution, like what Joy described. The other one might be an opt-out solution where people say, yeah, I mean, almost everyone wants to do this. Let's just create a way to say, if my project can't be involved in something like this, I check a box that says, don't include this project. So they're similar approaches. We have to keep track of either people who opt in or opt out one way or the other. But it might be more efficient to do one or the other, depending on sort of how many people in the network are interested and how comfortable they are with participating. So just for now, assuming that people are somewhat interested, how many people in the room would opt in if we decided to move forward with doing the Davit? I definitely would. So a pretty good number of people. Joy, you don't have a project in ACT. You're not allowed to vote. Great. Yeah. So good. So I mean, it seems like there's definitely some interest, and so we'll work on some more detail of what the actual options might be, and communicate further about sort of those options, and provide opportunity to give some feedback, and maybe set up a meeting with Joy in the network and OTN to have a special sort of virtual meeting about this for people to hear about it who haven't had the chance today, and to ask more questions and give some feedback, and we can all decide how to move forward together, and how we can help raise money to do that. Any other questions about Davit? Things that came up during the break? No, I thought that would be an easy one. Good.
Well, I guess the other
Sure.
thing is Joy mentioned that species.
Oh, right. Yes.
Needs to be maybe part of that opt-in request or opt-out.
Right. Yes. Yeah. So the thing, thank you, Dave. I wrote it on my slide and didn't read it. So there's sort of two decisions. One is do we want to do it? But one of the things that we'll need to do also so we'll need to decide, how people want to opt in or opt out of it. But we also need to decide what to do about adding species data to the data extracts that we get back. Will we share species level information so that like the big receiver project that we run from CERC, we find out what all of the species are for those tags that are detected. And with options, I think you have some projects that opt out for protected species or things. So there is the opportunity to opt out of that as well. Yes or no?
Opt out on sharing.
Yeah. Is there any? Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So so we need to make a decision about adding species data into the data extracts, and I think that's sort of the biggest change that would be a change in the user agreement that we would need buy-in on for that. And associated, I think what you said was that there are agreements to about how that information can be used. The way we currently support projects that need to report some information about the species detected on their arrays is that you can contact Kim, and we can help you create a summary on the back end that says, you're monitoring your data like in a national marine sanctuary. You want to know what species and like how many tags of what species, or at least what species were detected there across projects. And we can help generate a report like that that's high level, that helps you find out that information. But this would be a much cooler way to be able to share that with your funders or things. So we can, if you do need that kind of support, it's a summary report of species and maybe how many researchers tags you picked up, that kind of level of information, we can help with that. And that's, it's something that it would be an easy fix to what OTN does, an easy change to provide this information in our data extracts. It's just a decision that we need to make. Okay, one of the other things that's come up, particularly in some of the discussions we've had about offshore wind yesterday and today, is this idea of providing precise receiver locations to help people manage potential gear conflicts, either with across telemetry projects or with fishing gear or other kinds of things. So this is our current statement related to receiver locations in the user agreement, which, yeah, I think it's big enough to read. So we currently, the network is allowed to use it in high-level informational material, like for websites, for social media. This is the clause we use to produce that map that shows the OTN Act in fact receivers up and down the East Coast of North America. It's also the clause that we use for the map that is on the Matos data portal, where you can see the publicly accessible receivers on that map. To do, if we decide to, as a network, we could decide to share more precise receiver locations for creating maps for specific purposes. Things like the map that RWSC or the database that RWSC is trying to pull together to help share receiver locations in offshore wind. I think there's a lot of potential value to do this, probably also some concerns, but I wanted to kind of get people's thoughts in the room of whether what the thoughts are on how important this might be. Is this something we should think about as a network, if creating sort of some new sort of clause here that allows specifically to allow receiver locations that might otherwise be protected to go to specific purposes, like a map that RWC is creating that has specific parameters around how those data points are shared or things. Do people have thoughts on like what some of the potential uses might be, potential pitfalls? Yeah, kind of curious people's thoughts. Yeah, Jeff.
I just always support for it, so I recently had a interaction where I inadvertently released someone else's AR because they put it 200 feet away from the station that I had for 5 years, and I had no idea that they had done so. And their serial number was, the first 3 digits were the same. So it was like a lot of unfortunate circumstances. But since then, I've engaged with the owner, and we're going to work, I hope, through the RWC framework to share specific locations for that reason. And the issue was the same developer had authorized us to both put gear in the same spot. So there was a breakdown in communication on the developer side, and there was no connection between myself and that researcher. So we need to move this, and actually when we got together, we shared specific data, and we realized we had 2 other receivers that were like 1,000 feet apart. So the need for detailed location is paramount, especially in wind where there's crowded areas and multiple projects of interest.
Other thoughts or perspectives on this one? Yeah, Jordan.
I know that I'm also this resource and avoiding your conflicts.
I think of negative reasons, and I guess one is that the receivers change locations. So you could be false advertising receiver location. You have a receiver location with a tag data. That's good information. If you don't, if you just have receiver information, it depends when you gather that receiver information.
Right. So yeah, I mean, obviously all the receiver information we have in the database is from prior deployments, not necessarily what's currently deployed.
Exactly.
Jordan, did you have a comment on that? Is it
Yeah.
a problem?
It wasn't necessary. So it's not going to be exact, so that says like these things. And this is exactly right now, but just be aware of that. But also it doesn't have to be static, right? This can be updated, so if things move, there should be some system in place for you to go in and update that information. That accurate.
Yeah.
The other thing that concerns me a little bit,
Mhm.
just a little bit, is that people who are designing research and proposing research, they look at this now.
Mhm.
They can make assumptions like data will be available to me without reaching out to the folks that are running those receivers. So I think language and so on can take
Right.
care of, but on the plus side, they should be doing that, but just shouldn't be depending on the data without due diligence.
Right. Yeah. And that really gets at the communications issues that we were talking about yesterday, how to bridge, bridge across projects and different groups that might need to communicate about those things. Yeah, no, that's a really good point. Yep.
So I'm aware of a situation where someone underbid someone else by leveraging their array. Is that what you're getting at? Is that they underbid someone for a contract?
I don't know any specific examples, I just know that, I've been fortunate because people who have looked at, our receiver and said, oh, this is for a really good design, let me reach out to the design, they did the right thing. But on the other hand, they could have made this whole proposal and
Right.
everything else and just use the data. And so it's just, I think just have to couch it the right way. There are still kind of ethical standards here. And we don't know what they are. That's the other part. Is it okay to not include somebody in publication if that 10% of your detections are from that source? It's really still sufficient. And looking out the assets like this, we do it. We all do it. We say, oh, look, we're going to use the app network. We're going to learn so much more than what our array is going to tell us. But it's it could be abused.
Mhm. Yeah.
Do you have any ideas, Jeff? How do you get word that?
No, and I think there've been a few recent at least one I can think of recent publication that's addressed sort of this receiver array question. Sort of what is the attribution that we do
Yeah.
now of the cost and effort that goes into that, is it sufficient? So it's been a conversation since I've been involved in, probably since you've been involved in acoustic telemetry.
If I can pull that data out and still have something that's publishable, then that's the threshold for me. If I absolutely need that data to support study, then that's, but it doesn't, it's still not quite right. I mean, it is. That's an ethical situation is exactly where it still is. So I think the kind of approach that we're considering for this one, I'll need to explore a little bit more with OTN, sort of the different ways that we might think about implementing sort of opt-in, opt-out kind of solutions for this, so that we can propose actual solutions and decisions. And currently, we have a number of public projects, like my receiver array project is public. Some of the NOAA ones are public. And so those already as public projects within the database can flow like into the RWSC map. But to be fair, a lot of the offshore ones are public already because they're NOAA funded. And then we'll work on some options for solutions for the projects that are currently have receivers that are private, and how best we might give people the opportunity to contribute their receiver locations this way.
Great. And then I just have a few more points here of things that we're working on within the network. We've been at pretty minimal capacity the last couple of years to make things work and keep them working with some of the added capacity we have now through some of the projects we're doing related to working with offshore wind telemetry. We're going to be able to do a bit of a better job, I hope, communicating some of the metrics and results coming out of the work that we all do within the network. One of those things that we're doing is Beth and a couple others are helping us to compile a list of existing ACT publications. One of the things that we've been learning is that there are a lot of probably relevant publications that aren't attributing ACT necessarily in a way that's easily searchable. So a lot are. And there's some variation away that around the ways that that's described, which is probably our fault for not communicating ACT and Mantis and those various things together. But there's language in the user agreement about including attributions to the network, which the majority of you are already doing, but also, if possible, sharing publications with us so that we can add them to that list, and we'll find a good way to make that available, but we can share more information about our impact in that way. We're interested in learning about specific management and conservation outcomes. We talked this week about a couple examples of sturgeon and tuna stock assessments where telemetry data have been directly integrated into those assessments. We'd love to hear about more examples that we can share about things like that, and to work with you to help tell those stories in different formats and media. We're interested in helping you to tell your compelling stories and unexpected findings about the work that you're doing. And then we really want to, as I mentioned, we really want to work on doing things like leveraging environmental data, especially things like bottom temperature. So I'll stop there.